Oh my God, we are back for yet another episode of Grindhouse Chic. As always, I am Robert Schneider, and I am joined by my compadre, my friend, my sidekick, my loyal follower, my equal, Matt Armstrong. Matt, how are you tonight?
Good. How's it going with you?
I had a great comedy show. We packed the place. I told a joke about my kidney stones because this is the first time I've been out except for doctor's appointments since we recorded our last episode. It was the dumbest joke ever. I'll never tell it again. It was more the silence was more painful than the kidney stones that I passed. Oh, it was terrible. Never want to do that again. So I'm cutting
Interesting.
out of my diet completely.
Now I kind of want to hear it.
It was just something like this. I had kidney stones last week, which was problematic because I swore I would never get stoned again. It's so fucking bad. I'm ashamed of myself for thinking that was funny. Just ashamed of myself. Just ashamed. But let's get into it. Because I was out of work for the past week. I watched a lot of films, and I don't know if you had a chance to do any conquering your collection this week.
I got one in.
Okay, cool. Before we get to that, what did you think of the Cauldron releases?
I don't know if I saw them. Were they just announced?
They were announced on Friday.
Or am I just not remembering them?
They were announced on Friday. One is an Italian horror film, of course.
Oh, right.
And the other is a Japanese pinky film.
I'm interested in the Zero Woman. Just because I really want to start getting back into Asian cinema a lot, but I've never heard of Rat Man, but
I've heard of it.
Pretty interesting.
Our friend Jesse basically said he was in 10 minutes and he thought it was an insane movie, and that just convinced me to buy it. By that point I had not seen the trailer, so I was like, yeah, this looks like the film discovery of the year for me. I am not a big fan of Japanese pinky movies.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, based on the first release from Neon Eagle, I totally trust them.
So I keep forgetting, is Cauldron from the guy who runs Diabolic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's why that's the only place online you can get it besides cauldronfilms.com.
Got it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It is. I'm excited. I'm still excited for the ones they announced for August. I wish I didn't have to wait so long for them.
Yeah, that's the drawback.
But I mean, I've been waiting months for the Black Emmanuel set, which I'm expecting to hear about the next delay any day now.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad I didn't order it so far.
I find that hard to believe because you order everything. You have the worst case of FOMO.
I think by the time it actually comes out, it might get its first discount.
Well, the first disc of it is already out. The documentary on one of the directors, I can't remember if it was Matai or the other one, whose name I can't remember. But that disc is already out, which tells me the set's been printed. It's now just getting put together.
I think they're waiting for the little backpacks to be made or something.
I'm sure all that stuff was made beforehand, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because they have to start shipping out the other stuff in August.
Mm.
I do got to talk about one thing that kind of pissed me off. I was in one of the Vinegar Syndrome groups, and they were talking about the 10 film box set. And everyone was having their theories of what it was. Oh, I want it to be this series. I want it to be this series. And then there's like a few of us who pay attention. It's like, no, dude, this is the 10-year 10 films. It is not going to be a series of movies. And plus, no one wants a box set of all the Children of the Corn films.
Right.
There's only one. None of the sequels, remakes are any good. There's only one Children of the Corn film.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Arrow just put out like the first 3 like a year ago.
Yeah, they did. But it could be just like the Amityville set, where it was the shit movies, except It's
Right.
About Time, that came out were direct to video. And I'm now worried that we're in this phase of collecting where we're spending a shitload of money on shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing with blind buying. Like, luckily, I haven't had enough time to watch a ton of the movies that I've bought, so I haven't ran into a lot of shit yet. But it is, I mean, I like the aspect of at least saving the movies from, you know, being lost forever. But yeah, I mean, like $30 for something that might be completely terrible is quite a bit.
I agree. I agree. It's like, all right. So I'll admit, when the Amityville set came out, I groaned, but I got it because I was a subscriber, and I ended up liking two of the movies on there quite a bit. But as a consumer, would I have bought those if it wasn't for a subscription? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And I see people, and I'm not saying this to be like an ageism thing, who did not grow up with the films. Sure, they can be curious about it, but do they have the same emotional attachment that other people do? And like, or like no offense to Vinegar Syndrome, they put out good stuff, but they're not the Criterion Collection. They're not Kino. They're not Arrow, who are putting out films that people need to see.
Mm-hmm.
They put out Scanner Cop 1 and 2.
Yeah, but for every Scanner Cop, there's a Roadhouse, and everyone needs to see that.
I don't count VSU. VSU is their commercial line of it's their it's their Criterion. I don't agree with, like, I didn't agree with Showgirls, but Showgirls is on this month on the Criterion channel.
Yeah.
So they consider it an important enough picture to put on their hoity-toity library service. But
yeah,
but I don't understand, like, you know, I saw the first Prophecy movie. I'm interested in the other three. It surprised me that there were sequels to the Prophecy, which all starred Christopher Walken.
yeah. I remember getting those when I was a kid, but I don't remember anything about them.
I remember seeing the first one in the theater with my friend Loser Mike, and just thinking it was the shittiest movie I've ever seen.
What was your nickname?
I gave out nicknames.
I was gonna say.
Oh, actually, this is a funny story. So my friend Doug gave himself a nickname like Colt 45. And I'm like, you can't do that. You can't give yourself a nickname. And we were doing this at a bar in Detroit because my friend from Minneapolis's band was performing that night. And I'm like, all right, if you're calling yourself that, I'm going to call myself Cobra. And my friend Doug was like, you can't give yourself the nickname Cobra. I'm like, you gave yourself Colt 45. He's like, I drank 10 Colt 45, 40 ounces of one night. I deserve that nickname. So I'm getting sloshed, and my friend's band comes on, and they're like, oh, we're going to invite a friend of ours to come and sing a song with us. Get up for Cobra. And I'm just going, I'm in the back of the bar. Who the fuck would call themselves that? And Doug just looked at me. It's you. People were chanting Cobra, Cobra. And I am like, I am not cool enough to have the nickname Cobra. I'm a dork. People are just going to be disappointed when I go up there. So I went and hid in the ladies' bathroom. I didn't know it was ladies' bathroom, but I was really drunk at the time.
Right. The world missed out.
The world would have called me a poser. But I had nicknames in college, but I won't talk about them because they were embarrassing. Let's talk about our conquering our collection picks of the week. I'll let you start.
Ooh. Man, I opened the new bourbon and it is not good.
I've opened a water.
I'm like struggling to put this down. So I watched something that I am surprised that I had never seen. Um, Maybe not surprised, but um, it's the classic tale of girl gets swept up by a tornado to a magical land, meets three new friends, and has to perform a task to get back home. And I am talking about the classic, The Wiz.
How the fuck have you never seen The Wiz? How the fuck have you never east on down, east on down, east on down the road? How the fuck have you not heard the magic of Michael Jackson and Diana Ross in a retelling of the classic Wizard of Oz? How the fuck? How the fuck?
Yeah. I was surprised that I'd never seen it, but I saw it on in my box when I was going through them down here and finally cracked it open. Um, but I was even more surprised that I didn't like it that much. I usually really like musicals. This one obviously had like a lot of talent in it, but I think I just didn't like how it was so playy. Like it was
Because it
like,
was a play.
yeah, but
Yeah.
like you're making a movie, like make it a movie, you know.
To be honest, I haven't seen that movie since I was 12 years old, so my
Yeah,
memory of it is faded.
there were some parts that were cool, like some of the sets were cool looking. I felt bad like the whole time I was watching. I was like, man, this lead Dorothy can like not sing. And I looked up and saw this Diana Ross. I was like, oh man.
Do
I'd
you
say
know?
like the second half of the movie she picked it up, but the first half I was like,
You know Diana Ross and I have something in common.
what's that?
Our pictures are both in the Motown Museum.
Ooh.
Now
What
I
are you
put
in there
my own
for? Is
picture.
Cobra?
No, no, that is all right. So I went and visited with a friend of mine, and as we were walking through it, I noticed that at that point in time there was no security cameras in there, and there was this wall with a collage of pictures on it. And I am like, all right, I'm going to come back here next week. I came back the next week with glue and threw my picture on the wall. It's me behind a Honda car going like this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah, it was classy. It was classy.
Wonder if it's still there.
I don't know. I haven't been back to check. I thought about it going there after COVID, um, but I didn't because I moved to DC. Yeah. So first of all, who put it out on Blu-ray?
um, that I don't remember. Let me see. I know that it was super cheap. I got it. I'm talking like single dollars.
Oh,
Um, it's like it was just from Universal, just a stock release.
I don't remember that getting released.
But it wasn't a good. I don't know if the like. I don't know if this how is how it always was, but the sound was like really bad. Like the everyone singing, the volume was like way too low compared to the music, which is not good if they're singing 90% of the movie. Um, but I don't know. It was good. It definitely had like I was surprised that it was from the 70s. I thought it might have been from the 80s or something, just
No,
because of the way
I
it
think it's
looked.
really. I think its release year was 76.
Yeah, yeah, some cool stuff in there, but I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I could not convince my wife that that was Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I don't remember who played the Tin Man or Lion.
The Tin Man was
Was it Nipsey Russell?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
Who
the
played?
lion was like a guy who played the lion in the play, I think.
Okay. You mean the hit Broadway musical?
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
it was decent. It was all right.
I remember again So we had, before cable, we had this service called On TV, which we had to put an antenna on the top of our house, and it would take over a broadcast channel a certain time of night. And my favorite thing from it was we'd be getting these program books, which would have reviews and descriptions of every movie. And I remember just racing home to get it whenever, because it would come out like 2 weeks before the end of the month, so I could start planning which movies I could watch, and ask my parents if I could watch. And it was on, and I remember just watching with the whole family, and yeah, I only remember good things about it. But again, it's been forever since I've seen it.
Yeah, there was one part that I rewound and watched like 5 times. It was kind of when the lion first comes in, and he's like starts to cry because he doesn't have courage and all this stuff, and he like puts his head in Dorothy's lap, and he just starts real creepily like licking his hands, and the camera cuts to Michael Jackson and Nipsey Russell, and they just both like look at each other like, oh, that's kind of creepy. Like cuts back.
Yeah, Michael Jackson has no. Yeah, there's no. Forget it, that guy. Creepy. He was creepy. He was creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? What'd you watch?
All right, so I'm going to talk about one thing first, because it was a movie I had never seen before. It's not on Blu-ray. The DVD is long out of print, but it was on Showtime on Paramount Plus. And I remember the Brian Suhr on the Pure Cinema podcast talking about it, because he was playing it. They were playing at the New Beverly, and it was the Kirsten Dunst, Ben Foster classic, Get Over It.
Does that have a
It had
Cisco?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was not aware that Cisco did anything beyond the thong song. I can see why he did not have a career in Hollywood. But I watched it, and look, I there's something about like 90s teen rom-coms, like pretty much any rom-com, that the guy and the girl, the two stars are going to get together by the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was shocked that this was a rom-com that had the predictable ending, but it poked fun at rom-coms at the same time, and it was a very clever movie that I found myself laughing at several times. And I think what made it really good was the opening would have been the typical high school love story about these two kids who grew up next door to each other. They were the best of friends. And Ben Foster's character thought they were meant to be together, and then she moved away, only to return when they were in high school. They recognized each other immediately and fell in love. That's the beginning, middle, and end of most love stories. By the 7th minute, she had already broken up with him and given him they went out for like 16 months. And then he starts walking out of the house with the box of stuff that he had left over there. The garage opens, and this band comes out singing "Love Will Keep Us Together." And then more and more people start joining it. I'm like, okay, this is not the typical rom-com. And I thought it was one of the funniest films I had seen in a while.
Yeah, I feel like I remember that one. Is that the one that just had like a bunch of people in, like a bunch of famous people, good actors?
I mean, at the time, no. I mean, I don't think so.
I'm thinking of
it had Kirsten Dunst, Ben Foster, Melissa Sage Miller, Cisco, and Shane West and Colin Hanks, and in probably one of her first appearances, Zoe Saldana and Mila Kunis. Shane West was hilarious. He was a former boy band member with a British accent, which wasn't really British. Oh, and Martin Short was in it too, as the drama teacher.
Yeah, I feel like I do remember this movie.
It was fun.
Was Coolio in it?
Yes, Coolio was in a cameo because his parents were played by Ed Begley Jr. and Susie Kurtz, and they had a relationship show, and Coolio just looked confused being on it. It was a really good movie, and I'm only saying that because the movie that I ended up watching was not a good movie, and it it had two cuts to it: the director's cut and the producer's cut. It was on the William Griffey box set from Arrow, The Naked Zoo. It starred Rita Hayworth in her last movie, Steve Oliver, and Faye Spain, and Ford Rainey. And in the producer's version, the band Canned Heat. So William Griffey was a filmmaker from Florida, and this movie was about a writer slash gigolo who slept with a lot of women, wrote some books, and then ended up being part of a murder. That's it. Rita Hayworth, this was her last film. She was a shell of her former self. In the Ford Rainey was interesting because, all right, so the Shaw character, Terry Shaw, was having an affair with Rita Hayworth, and she was giving him money. Her husband, I think, knew about the affair, and we had a really tense dinner scene, and I think that was the best part of the director's cut. I'm not really giving this movie the best explanation because it's a shit film, but the producer's cut was shorter and had more nudity and canned heat. It might be my favorite William Griffey film because I also watched Mako, The Jaws of Death, and I found myself wishing the shark could kill me and put me out of my misery from watching it.
I was going to say, are any of his movies good? Because I started watching Whiskey Mountain once, and I think I lasted like 10 minutes, and I was like, I'm going to go do anything else right now.
That I don't know. I don't know. I watched The Psychedelic Priest, and that one felt like a 7-hour movie and a bad trip. But
we're getting one from Grindhouse releasing, aren't we?
Yeah, the William Shatner movie.
Yeah.
Because of my beef with Grindhouse release, and I will not be buying it from them.
Ooh.
They refuse to take back the replace the disc for the tough ones.
Would it come like broken or something, or it just didn't work?
It came scratched. There was a bullet pen that was inside the pack, and the disc got dislodged, and it was scratched beyond belief, and it wouldn't play. You don't put your special. I don't know why they put their limited edition items in the case with the disc.
Yeah, but, bad idea.
Yeah. But the producer's cut of the Griffey film, it added a nude scene with a woman playing with a naked woman playing with a vibrator, having a phone conversation with Rita Hayworth's character, and it cut out most of Ford Rainey's most of his dialogue, to the point where he just came down in a wheelchair and tried shooting at him. But it did add the band Canned Heat into what might be in the producer's cut was one of the greatest party sequence I have ever seen, because the Terry Shaw character was on a date with this older woman, by older in her 40s. She dressed up like a hippie, and she was racist because his girlfriend was black, and she's like, why is there a Negro in here? And so they gave her acid when she became the butt of everyone's joke, and it made the party scene just hilarious. But the producers cut, they add the band Canned Heat, and even made it better. It's funny because like none of the band's instruments are plugged in, but yet it's an electric performance. Lead singer doesn't have a microphone, but he's singing.
They just put him in there just to have him.
Yeah. Griffey hates the producer's cut because he calls it pornographic. I call it where a lot of the extraneous stuff was cut out compared to his other films, because his films are a chore to get through.
Yeah, I keep wanting to try to sit down with that box set, and I don't know. After Whiskey Mountain, I don't know if I can do it.
Here's the thing: Tarantino loves Whiskey Mountain.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, maybe it gets better.
I don't know. It's a Griffey film. This I think this was the first Arrow box set I was disappointed in purchasing,
Mm.
but I got it for such a good deal. They had it was right, it was announced that it was about to be out of print, and Amazon had it for $30 on sale.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is a no brainer. Buy mine 2 days later.
And then you watched it and you were like, oh.
How could a movie called The Psychedelic Priest be bad?
Oh, this is why.
It's a great fucking title. Oh man, let's talk about a movie we'll be talking about for a while. Lost Highway from the Criterion Collection. Have you seen a David Lynch movie before?
Oh yeah.
Okay, he is my favorite filmmaker. Um, ever since I watched Blue Velvet and when Twin Peaks originally aired, I was in love with his stuff. Not so much Dune or The Elephant Man, but Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which took me time to appreciate, Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire, which I still don't understand, and the Twin Peaks The Return. The only movie of his I haven't seen is The Straight Story. Maybe one day, but the idea of someone driving a tractor across the country does not scream David Lynch to me.
The first one I ever saw was Eraserhead. So having seen that first, I was like, wow, this guy's pretty fucking weird. But I dove into some of his other ones. But there was a long point in my life where I did not know the difference between David Lynch and David Cronenberg.
Yeah, Cronenberg makes movies, Lynch makes art.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that I do prefer Cronenberg just because I love body horror, but I would say that that is correct.
I prefer David Lynch. His movies aren't easy.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't offer answers. His movies are like art because it's up to interpretation. Have you seen Lost Highway before?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Like long time ago. I think it was probably a blind buy off of a Best Buy shelf as a DVD back in the day.
Okay. I saw this movie originally at Phipps Plaza, the AMC at Phipps Plaza in Atlanta. None of my friends wanted to go with me to see it. So I was there on a Saturday night, packed audience. I was by myself, and it sucked because I really wanted to talk to somebody about this movie afterwards. And I've probably seen this movie about 20 times. And this time I noticed something that I have never noticed before. And it totally changed the story for me. I'm a firm believer that Eraserhead, Twin Peaks, the original series, Fire Walk with Me and The Return, Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, and Mulholland Drive take place in the same universe.
Okay.
And the Robert Blake character is a character where like Bob and creatures from Mulholland Drive, all like the thing behind the dumpster in Mulholland Drive, all exist. After this viewing, I no longer think about it that way. First of all, this movie has an impressive cast. It has Patricia Arquette. Not Bill. Why can't I remember who the cast is? Why do I?
Bill Pullman.
Bill Pullman, Robert.
Which if you remember when we were talking about Striptease, I said that I, for the longest time, thought that Bill Pullman was in Striptease. Especially after watching this again, man, they're like the same person.
They are not the same person. So Bill Pullman, Patricia Arquette, Robert Blake, Henry Rollins, Balthazar Getty, Gary Busey.
Very weird Gary Busey role, just because it was normal.
Natasha Gregson Wagner, Richard Pryor in his last movie, Robert Loggia, Jack Nance, Marilyn Manson, Giovanni Ribisi, and a few other people. But let's go by what the IMDb says this movie is about. Anonymous videotapes presage a musician's murder conviction, and gangster's girlfriend leads to a mechanic astray. All right, that one was stupid. Fred Madison, a saxophonist, is accused under mysterious circumstances of murdering his wife, Renee. On death row, he inexplicably morphs into a young man named Pete Dayton, leading a completely different life. When Pete is released, his and Fred's past begin to cross in a surreal, suspenseful web of intrigue, orchestrated by a shady gangster boss named Dick Laurent. Haunting sexuality, ricochet action, and fleeting murderous shadows await you on a journey that begins and ends on the Lost Highway. So let's start with the opening sequence. It's probably one of my favorites. It's just of a road where David Bowie music is playing as the cast. We see the cast come up on the screen. Mm-hmm. And starts the next morning. A doorbell rings. Our main character, Fred, goes to the door, and on the intercom we hear Dick Laurent is dead. Him and his wife then start receiving videotapes of their house, and it keeps on getting worse as the person who's filming them starts outside and eventually gets inside. They call the cops. At this point, Renee said something interesting, that Fred doesn't like video cameras, and then he says, I like to remember things my way, not the way they are. Mm-hmm. And upon viewing it this time, that became the most important line in the movie.
Was that the thing you noticed?
No, I'll get into that after we talk about it. They go to a party. They meet. Before that, he goes to the jazz club where he works. She decides to stay home. He tries calling, no answer. He comes home and she was asleep. They go to a party run by this creepy dude named Andy that she met at a place called Mook's. There he meets Robert Blake. Basically, very pale dude, comes in and goes, we've met before, haven't we? And Fred starts a conversation with him where he goes, we met at your house. In fact, I'm there right now. He then he hands him his phone, calls, and Robert Blake picks up. Fred gets a little freaked out. He grabs his wife. They leave. They go back home. He tells her not to go in the house. He goes in. We see a light flash in the house. Before they go, he goes in. They go in. It turns out he then kills her. He said he didn't do it. He goes to jail. Henry Rollins plays the best jail guard in the history of jail guards. While he's in jail, he starts complaining of headaches and he's not feeling well. We also find out he's on death row. He's going to get electrocuted, which I think might have been the fastest trial in the history of movies.
Yeah.
But one day, a guard goes in there and is freaked out because Fred is no longer there. He's replaced by Balthazar Getty. People are confused of how he got in there. His parents come and pick him up. And what's interesting, and this is, I never really noticed this before either, but his parents come in leather jackets looking like they're badass bikers, and they drive a fucking station wagon. Yep. They take him home. His friends come over. He has sex with his girlfriend, played by the very beautiful Natasha Gregson Wagner, who never really had much of a career. I don't know why. She was really good. We find out something happened to him right before they found him in the prison. He works at a garage owned by Richard Pryor. Sadly, again, once his last acting role. We know that he's a pretty good mechanic because Mr. Eddie comes, which leads to one of my favorite sequences in the film. They go for a ride to see what's the sound is wrong. There's something sounds weird in his engine. Pete fixes it. They go for a ride on a mountainside road. Somebody passes him, Mr. Eddie, or starts tailgating him. Then Mr. Eddie says, "Pass him." Then he rams his car into it and gives one of cinema's greatest monologues about how many car spaces to stay behind and the dangers of tailgating, all as he's kicking the shit out of this guy.
Yeah, that was a very good lesson.
I live by it. I live by that. One thing I found really funny is before that happened is Mr. Eddie starts speeding up. His two goons know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And they put their seatbelts on. They make it back to the garage, and then Mr. Eddie offers him a porno. There's also cops watching this Pete character. Mr. Eddie brings his Cadillac in the next. Was it a Cadillac or Rolls?
He brought a Cadillac in the next day
with Patricia Arquette looking very different, and she is Alice, known as Alice in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Her and Pete start having an affair, and around this time, after this affair starts, Pete's reality starts falling apart because Alice isn't trustworthy. It ends up that she wants to get away from Mr. Eddie, who is also Dick Laurent. And she has this friend named Andy who she met at a place called Mook's. Turns out Andy makes dirty movies for Mr. Eddie. So before Pete goes to help her kill him and steal from him, gets a very bizarre phone call from Mr. Eddie and the mystery man. You doing good, Pete? You doing good? I'm glad to hear you're doing good. My friend wants to talk to you. It just becomes this really, really weird conversation that's actually pretty bone chilling. Pete goes, they go and they kill the guy. And probably in a pretty brutal death. We do see, actually, I take it back. At one point, Alice does tell Pete the story of how she met Mr. Eddie, but by giving him a striptease, and there were guys with guns there. And then we just see her on screen in a really fucked up porno movie starring Marilyn Manson. We also see a picture of Mr. Eddie, Andy, and Renee and Alice. It gets a little bit more interesting there. Pete and Alice then go to fence the stuff at a weird house that we've seen before in the film. The Robert Blake character pops out and then basically has this conversation it becomes Pete becomes Fred again. And basically says her name was Renee. If anyone told you who was Alice, they were lying. Or did I get it the wrong way? It was Renee, right?
Yeah. That was right.
Okay. Then we see Fred go to the Lost Highway Motel, where he sees Mr. Eddie or Dick Laurent and his wife. And now it seems him and the Robert Blake character are buddies. And they go and kill Mr. Eddie. The police show up at Andy's house and say Pete's prints are all over the place. Fred drives down the lost highway, ends up at his old house, rings the doorbell, and then when the intercom comes on, it says Dick Laurent is dead. So the movie basically ends where it started. Then Pete goes on to a police chase, and then there's buzzing, and he fades out of existence. Wow.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. All right. So my mind is blown because I last night after watching it, I'm sorry, Friday night after watching it, I noticed something that I've never noticed before. That during the Fred and Renee sequences, she never touches him.
Mm-hmm.
They don't touch. Fred might touch her, but she does not touch him. In fact, when they're watching the videotape, they are sitting far away from each other. So we can tell there's something really wrong with this marriage.
Yeah.
So I have built a new theory on this movie. But before I say it, let me hear your theory of Lost Highway.
So I guess the way that I see this movie is Fred. I think that Fred, the whole movie is just basically formed around Fred not being able to get it up. So a series of events happen, and I think Renee actually is cheating on him, is with Laurent, is doing porn. He finds out, kills her, kills Laurent, kills Andy, and then he is taken into jail. I think everything that happens up until he gets punched in the face by the detective is just him telling his account of what has happened. And then once he goes into the cell, looks up, sees the blue light, that's him kind of going into his fantasy of, I can be this Pete guy where I can have, my wife. I couldn't please my wife. Now I'm this cool Pete guy who can please all these women, and I'm going to take it one step further and make the woman look exactly like my wife. And so I think it's just him kind of replaying everything that happened, but him as Pete this time to kind of disassociate from it.
So I agree mostly with what you said. So yes, the story is about Fred who can't get it up. So here's the thing. I only think, and I said the most important line that was said was Fred doesn't like video cameras. He likes to remember things his way, not the way they were.
Mm-hmm.
Which at that point makes Fred a very unreliable narrator. And this movie is through Fred's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So here are the things I think that happened. I don't think much of the movie really happened. I think Fred at the Lost Highway Inn or hotel motel murdered Dick Laurent after his wife left. I don't think Andy ever died. I think that was that was part of the Pete fantasy.
See, I kind of thought that at first, but then there's the part where, as Pete, he's talking to Alice, and she says the thing like, "You killed him."
Yeah,
kind
because
of like switching it up.
No, because at that point, his fantasy of Alice started going to betrayal, much like Renee did with Fred. That's all in his mind. Because again, we got to look through the time frame. And while again, Fred is not a reliable narrator, he killed his wife the night
and not just killed her, like
yeah, he dismembered,
like ripped her body in half.
Disboweled. Well, yes, he opened her entrails.
Yeah.
But that happened the same night of Andy's party.
Mm-hmm.
I think the guilt was too much for Fred, that he of kill. Actually, let me go back. The fact that he killed Laurent, the guilt was too much for him. He was already out of control at that point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he was already guilty of that, and that we tell that when he imagined the doorbell ringing and someone saying Dick Laurent is dead.
Right.
So that was from his brain. He already knew what Alice did, so there was no trust in that marriage any longer. They were not a loving couple, and you could just tell by the way Patricia Arquette acted. Even like when she got nude in front of him, there was nothing sexual about it.
Yeah. And the part where they did try to bang in the beginning and he couldn't do it, he like rolls over and you just see her hand come up and like give him a little pity pat. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, sometimes your wife tells me she does that to you.
No.
No, it's okay. So they go to Andy's party, and he knows more about Andy, which is why he's asking all the questions how they met.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they talk about mooks. At that point, the Robert Blake character comes in. Robert Blake's character was never at the party.
Right. Yeah.
That was again, that was a manifestation of his guilt and him trying to erase the memory of what he did.
Yeah.
And what he's about to do. He was putting the blame on something that didn't exist. So when he goes and asks Andy who that person is, Andy is not talking about the Robert Blake because he's not there, about the guy who was standing there
Mm-hmm.
and is next to him. He then went home and murdered his wife because he couldn't stand that she was cheating on him in the worst possible way.
Right.
Fred, after he got to jail, I believe, withdrew and went into this fantasy world of Pete because Pete was everything that Fred wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
He was virile. He had friends. He had a hot girlfriend, and then he had Alice.
And he had a cool fucking dad.
No, not really. And the longer you look at the Pete sequence, none of it really makes sense. None of it does. Now, but actually, okay, it doesn't really make sense. But I'm gonna try to make sense of it. The cops who were following him was already a manifestation of Fred's guilt. He couldn't let the life of Pete be normal because he was feeling guilty of what he did.
Mm-hmm.
When Alice entered Pete's life, it was Renee, but it wasn't. She was blonde, or somehow she looked hotter than she did as Renee. She was a blonde, and she was in a relationship that she didn't want to be in with
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Eddie. Mr. Eddie in Pete's world was Fred. He was the guy getting cheated on. He
Right.
was this crazy old man who didn't deserve her, because that's the way Fred saw himself.
Yeah.
And the more that he got into this relationship with Alice, the more this fake reality started crumbling around him. The first signs that we see of that is in the garage when Jack Nance's character is playing jazz. He's playing one of Fred's songs. And Pete starts getting a massive headache because it's the intrusion of his real life that's coming in there.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack Nance's character says, I liked it. I like that music. Um, but also, if we notice around this time, Mr. Eddie starts acting differently too. In a way, he has become impotent
Mm-hmm.
because he knows that Alice is cheating and he's all talk. He doesn't resort to any action. Mr. Eddie is a supposedly powerful gangster who would beat the shit out of anyone who would cut him off on the road. But when Pete is having an affair with his girlfriend, he just said, if I found out anyone would do it, I would kill him. But as we noticed earlier, Mr. Eddie was a man of action, not of words, even though he used a lot of words for his actions. So at that point, he just became really unimportant to the story in this new version of in Fred's new reality.
Mm-hmm.
Then as Alice starts getting Pete involved in the caper, things even start to fall apart even more. His girlfriend leaves him, has a fight on the lawn. He wants his parents to tell him what happened. They don't tell him because nothing happened. Fred never thought this part of the story out.
Yeah.
He was living in this perfect world. And again, she wants to go to Andy's house. She wants him to take the bus. Here's a guy who drives cool cars. Cars are his life. The bus is a metaphor that he's no longer in control. Because when you drive yourself, you're in control. When you have to take public transportation, you are not.
Yeah.
Coming in there and watching him seeing the porno of Alice on the wall basically says to the audience and Fred's subconscious that she is not trustworthy. Because Andy was the one who got her into this life, supposedly. He had to kill him because he viewed Andy as a threat to his marriage or to his relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when they go to the beach shack, he finally comes out of it. He finally is like, okay, because he's remembering what really happened. He is no longer editing that out. He killed Dick Laurent. He saw his wife and Laurent having sex, killed him. He was already going to kill his wife at this point. That's why he goes back to the house and gives himself a warning. That's why the cops are already there, even though it seems like this is a big time conundrum that he's going back before. And then there's a car chase, and we see him, kind of fading in out of reality. That's the point. He's being executed in the electric chair.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was going to ask you about the picture that Pete sees when he kills Andy of the two Patricia Arquettes.
It's a convergence of reality.
I was gonna ask if you thought it was just that, or do you think it's just, a lot of this is Fred trying to. He's got the guilt. He's trying to, push that off somewhere. When I was watching, I kind of felt like, oh, he's kind of trying to make these two different Patricia Arquettes and saying like, oh, that first one with the dark hair, she would never do this like porn thing and cheat on me. It's this other one that's doing that. They're not the same person.
Yes, but they are the same person because Robert Blake said You're lying. Whoever told you that was lying.
Yeah.
But now here's the other thing. Did Renee actually do porn? Because the cops would have recognized her probably. They look like two guys who consumed a lot of porn.
I think she did. I think I feel like one of the tapes that showed up, that's what it was, because we don't, it's never really said that that's actually what is on those tapes. That's just him telling us what was on it.
Right, right, right. Now, to be fair, there might not have been any tapes to begin with.
Yeah, also true.
I mean, those cops could have just been the arresting cops.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we look at the way the story took place, I would say the arrest is where his mind finally snapped.
Yeah,
Mind snapped.
could be.
I think his mind started to snap when he killed Dick Laurent.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was at that point where he like walks into the corner of his room like in the complete darkness and like walks back out and he's has like a new like I don't give a fuck look on his face.
Well,
Where Renee's like calling for him.
yes, 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 yes. But I think he had that look throughout the whole first act up until the point because we're following a narrator who has gone through hell. I mean, his wife doesn't love him. She's with someone else. She may or may not have been doing porn. And he killed Laurent. And I'm sure he had a really bad argument with his wife that night. Because get this, the first time we ever saw her smile was at Andy's party.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by structure of the writing, that Renee was a very ill-defined character. Like the only thing that we know about her was she met Andy at a place called Mook's and he helped her get a job. Beyond that, she was a cipher.
But I feel like that she was doing porn, and I think it's because when when the when we see the videos that she was doing, and there's a flashback of like, her like posing and stuff in them. She's got like some heels on and stuff like that. And in the beginning, when it's his retelling, she's always wearing like those 6-inch heels, no matter what she's doing. She's always wearing like a robe and nothing else.
But maybe because of her having affairs that he saw in his version of this story, she was a whore.
Maybe, yeah.
Again, I'm sorry, not Andy. Fred is a very unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
And again, it's weird that one line, a fucking throwaway line, in my opinion, is the most important line in the film.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating film, and every time I watch it, I feel different because, much like I said, David Lynch's work is art. Art is open to interpretation, and his movies are, because if we really look at this one, it did not have a beginning, middle, and end. It had beginning, middle, a beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and then a fade out of existence.
I read that Lynch was like super obsessed with the OJ trial when he was writing this, and he put a lot of like inspiration from that into this.
That would make sense. But just remember, Lynch was not the only writer of this film.
Mm-hmm.
William Gifford, he was William Gifford? He co-wrote it because he based Wild at Heart on Gifford's book, A Sailor's Story. And they collaborated.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I just found this watching of it so immersive, and maybe it's because I started at 10 o'clock at night on on Friday, and I was on painkillers from kidney stones, and I I don't know. It was like the first time I seen it, and I saw this cut, this version, this print, or this restoration at the AFI Silver Spring last earlier, right before it came out on 4K. So it was last year, and that was the second time I saw it on the big screen. I think I was so excited I missed things in there, but I noticed other things that I've never noticed before. So I'm kind of glad that we talked about a non genre film this week.
Yeah, I was telling my wife it's nice to watch like a real a real movie.
We need to do more of this.
Yeah.
How many Robert Blakes would you give this movie? Oh no. Hold on.
Robert Blake eyebrows.
Um, how many videotapes would you give this movie?
um I'm trying to compare it to what I would rate some of the other ones. I think I'm gonna go 4.5.
I'm gonna go straight 5.
Straight 5.
I mean, there's nothing bad about this movie.
Yeah.
In fact, I so when I rate Lynch films, at one point Blue Velvet was my favorite. Fire Walk with Me is now my favorite. If I could consider The Return 18-hour film, that would probably be my favorite David Lynch movie. But this is number 2, because while he has embraced the weird in Eraserhead, I still find Eraserhead a very difficult movie to watch. That baby creeps me out.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
he definitely is very, very good at creating like a surreal atmosphere in his movies. And I think that definitely allows for a less easy to follow story if you're just immersed in this, surreal thing that he's putting in front of you.
the thing, like, again, when I first saw it, and I will use Mulholland Drive because I think Mulholland Drive has some of the same structure as this film,
Mm-hmm.
where everything is not as it seems. I think this is a better film than Mulholland Drive. I think this film is creative. It's telling a difficult story in a very difficult manner.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a film you take someone who goes and watches blockbusters to go see, because you would be having a long conversation about it afterwards. I took a friend when I lived in Kansas City to go see Blue Velvet at the Alamo Draft House. He had never seen any David Lynch movies. He walked out of there going, "I don't know what I just saw, but I liked it."
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it is probably his, at least that I can remember, his best I don't know, best looking film maybe.
That might be because it was 4K. I think Fire Walk with Me might be his best looking film.
I haven't seen, I have that, but I don't think I've watched it.
I was gonna watch it yesterday, but I decided to watch another Patricia Arquette movie instead.
What
Her
was it?
first film, Pretty Smart, which is available
Hmm.
through Scorpion Releasing, which you can order at Kino.com.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of gratuitous nudity in that film. None of her.
Oh.
But no, I enjoyed this film, and I'm looking forward to us at some point talking about some of his other films or other movies released from the Criterion Collection or other highbrow labels. Um,
You
before
don't
we
want
go,
to. You don't want to watch another Virgin High esque movie.
I will totally. I will. I mean, Pretty Smart was a Virgin High esque movie.
Yeah.
Um, but it also had a lot more nudity than Virgin High. Um, let's talk about a few things before we discuss what our next week's movie is, and that we are going to be we're going to be joined by some guests on this next one. What do you think about the actors strike?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely tough. I understand both sides of it, or I understand their side of it. There's one aspect of it that I don't completely understand, just because of the way that it is in that type of job. But I do think we should probably enjoy all these good movies that are coming out this year, because might not be many next year.
I think this strike will be over in 6 weeks.
Do you? Could be.
I think the shareholders of the studios are going to be pissed.
Yeah.
And look, I work in an industry where I'm worried about AI taking over my job. I think, in fact, I know that AI is going to be a thing a lot of corporations are going to be looking at to save money because it's smarter than we are.
Mm-hmm.
It has access to every bit of knowledge out there. What would take us years to learn, it can take minutes, seconds. I think what it doesn't have is humanity, because you can't teach that.
Yeah, and that's the side of it I do understand, especially the aspect of, like, they're coming in to scan their likeness and they're getting paid once, and then the companies just want to use that likeness in
No,
a
no,
bunch of movies.
they own the likeness.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Willis has signed over his likeness. So we can see bad Bruce Willis movies for years to come.
The side of it that I don't really understand is the part that has to do with what are those called?
Royalties.
Yeah, royalties, and like the checks they get. It's another R word.
Residual.
Residuals. I don't understand that completely, but like the way I look at it in my job is, like, if I design this system and it gets put into a building, I get paid for designing it and installing it. I'm not getting paid for, like, every time the system kicks in and does its thing. So I don't really understand how.
All right. Let's say you were on a hit series like Friends or Big Bang Theory or Seinfeld, shows which are constantly in syndication. You get paid for those shows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every year it gets less and less, but you still get paid. I mean, from what I heard, the cast of Friends made millions and millions on residuals for as many times as it aired in syndication.
Right.
Streaming has come along. Netflix is very secretive about the numbers that things do, that their shows do.
Right.
So millions of us could be watching Gilmore Girls on there. And like someone like Sean Gunn, who played a character, he was kind of a regular on that show, should be making thousands of dollars from the residuals. But instead he gets a check for $25.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, because acting is, there's no guarantee you're going to be on a hit show forever. They're protected by all these people who are still making money off of it, that everyone who's on that episode should be making money off of it.
Right.
But streaming, they don't want to pay for streaming. But as more people have adapted, adopted that as their primary way of watching stuff, they need to get paid for it.
Yeah. So is it only shows that's a huge concern with? Like
Movies,
if I
movies as
if I
well.
pop on a movie on HBO or something, like,
They should get paid for that.
okay.
That's why stuff only, only lasts on there for a finite amount of time, because they don't want to, if it's something that's going to be huge, they don't want to be paying actors for it forever. So they'll take it a rotation for a while, or it'll go somewhere else. But this strike won't affect it'll affect everybody. It's not about like the bigger actors who, like John Goodman, or who else is a popular actor? I don't know anyone else.
That's the first one you go with.
I was watching The Righteous Gemstones. Who's a popular actor on a show? I don't watch regular
Jason Sudeikis.
All right. No, but he's not on broadcast TV. All right. So
I only watch streaming shows. I don't have cable.
Yeah, I don't either. So if like it could be someone like Jason Sudeikis, but let's say Ted Lasso was on NBC. It was on 10 years ago. So Sudeikis, since he's a star, he's making the most money. But let's say you were on an episode, season 3, episode 14, which for some reason is a popular episode because he's teaching someone how to kick a ball and it hits you in the nuts. And your line is, my glory. And if that show went in regular syndication, you would be making money every time it aired. You need that money as an actor because it pays your bills. And knowing that you're getting a somewhat steady income off of it, because people want you to hear you say, oh my glory, as you get smacked in the balls. It's a funny thing. But those residuals at the highest point of its popularity and syndication, you'd be making hundreds, if not thousands, from it.
Right.
Which will help you pay for your insurance, your home. And when you have someone from one of the studios say, we hope to break the actors, and we think we will, when they start not being able to afford rent or their homes, they'll come crawling back.
Yeah, I saw that.
Actors are the most important part of your product. If you think you can use AI, people are going to not want to see your movies. Because there was once a dream that, yes, I can make it in Hollywood. I have the skills. And once they stop using people, once movies become written and starring AI animations, which could look almost as real, Hollywood doesn't become real anymore. It doesn't become something that we can strive for. It becomes, how everyone says it's fake, it really will be.
Yeah. Did you start watching that Secret Invasion show at all?
I tried.
I read that entire, like, their opening credits is all AI generated.
So
like
here's the thing.
Big hubbub about it.
I have no problem with opening credits being AI.
Yeah.
I mean, they've used illustration on credits before. And in advertising, we use AI. Like one of my art directors uses Midgard to create facsimiles of what a photograph could look like. Because it's easier than Photoshop. So I think it'll be interesting. Yeah. I think it'll be over. I think my thought is, I said 6 weeks, 6 weeks to 2 months. That's where it'll be. I think when they don't have their fall schedule and they are trying to figure out what shows to put on, like ABC just announced that they will be moving Miss Marvel over from Disney Plus to air on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. which will make it the first Marvel series to go from Disney Plus to regular broadcast
Yeah,
TV.
that's weird.
Now the big thing is, those actors going to get paid.
Yeah, I wonder why. Did they say why they're doing that?
Probably because they need content.
Yeah.
And there's only so many times you can watch Claim to Fame. I've never seen it, but I'm intrigued that the relatives of celebrities are in a reality show where you have to guess which which celebrity they're related to.
Yeah.
You pick up anything good this week?
I don't think so. I don't think anything else that I ordered has come in yet.
I had an order from Amazon come in. I got a Doctor Who set from, I think, the third year of the third Doctor, John Pertwee. I got Sisu and John Wick in the mail. And then
The new one, the new John Wick.
yeah. And then Scream 6. And that's it. And I finally did watch Evil Dead Rise.
What'd you think?
It's not an Evil Dead movie.
Yeah, I missed the cabin.
The cabin's there, and I do like the way the ending goes into the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't Evil Dead. I thought there were lots of cool things in the movie. There was a lot of gore. It just wasn't Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I think the thing that was missing from it was the fun. It was not a fun movie in the sense of the first three. It didn't have the laughs. There was nothing over the top about it.
Yeah, and there was an aspect of it that I hated, and it was like the director trying to use foreshadowing, and it kept like every time they were in the parking garage, the camera kept like panning over to the like wood chipper truck, like, oh, this is coming up later, just wait for it. They did it like 4 or 5 times, and I was like, okay, we get it. They're going to use a wood chipper.
I was glad there was a chainsaw in it.
Yeah.
But it really felt a lot like Demons to me.
Yeah. I did think that opening title card was
awesome. Oh yeah, it was sweet. It was sweet. Yeah. Yeah, it was sweet. I also found it really weird that woman did not notice anything that night.
Yeah.
And then she gets possessed on her way to a cabin in the woods.
Yeah.
I thought I thought the opening part was pretty cool, where she scalps her friend. But yeah, it was not an Evil Dead movie, and I feel bad because I like the franchise. I think there's a time and a place, and I think it's time for Hollywood to leave things where they are.
Yeah.
But
or just let Raimi come in and get one last one.
Well, Raimi was involved. He was an executive producer.
Yeah, he was.
And he was the creator of Ash versus the Evil Dead, which was really what, I don't think that show was the greatest, but it was our swan song to Ash.
Yeah.
Man, I am dreading next week's movie. I am dreading it.
I'm only dreading it because I'm gonna have to watch it again, so that I'm.
So, yeah, well, next week we are going to be talking about Bat Pussy.
Oh yeah.
I feel, and we're basically going to be talking about the whole AGFA release, because we can talk about Bat Pussy in just a minute.
Right.
We are going to be joined by 2 friends. One of our friends, Joel Austin, will be on. He lives in Dallas, which makes him the Bat Pussy expert. And we have Johnny Mockney, host of the We Love Movies podcast, which I have been a guest on several times.
I listened to one you were on. It was good.
Yeah.
I think it was the That guy, that guy that's got the box set.
Milligan. Milligan.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I don't think I said very kind things about the movies.
No, he did not.
Actually, I said something about the short vapors. I like that one quite a bit. But yeah, we are going to be discussing Bat Pussy. What was the other movie on there?
um, Batman and Robin meet Dick Nose. I believe you're referring to.
Yep, and the trailers on there.
Yep.
And
There's a couple like PSA little documentaries that were.
We're going to talk about we're going to talk about everything.
One of which was filmed 20 minutes north from me in Akron, Ohio.
A place where
O'Neill's department store, the one about stealing.
We will definitely be talking about that. But I want to go ahead to 2 weeks from now. Because next week we are talking about filth. I think the following week we got to talk about some religion.
Okay.
I think we should
Passion of the Christ.
No, I think we should watch two of the. Do you have the Ron Orman box set, right?
Yeah, I do.
I think we should watch Footman and the one after that about hell.
Okay.
Because after we watch Bat Pussy, we're gonna need some good old Southern preaching in our lives. Well, that does it for this week's episode of Grindhouse Chic. If you liked it, hit subscribe. If you liked it, hit subscribe, share, tell your friends. We are at 66 subscribers. We need more. We need more. We want to get monetized, which means I'll have to stop swearing.
Just in the first like 30 seconds, right?
I don't know. I can do that. But we'll see you next week with the Fantastic Four discussing Bat Pussy. God help us all. God help us all.